So today I want to talk about woodenware for new beekeepers. I know people get pretty overwhelmed with the amount of equipment and the different choices that you have and the varieties of beekeeping equipment. So I'm going to cover 10-frame langstroth hives. That's what I use. I believe it's the most common that most people do use. I think when you're just starting out, in my opinion, I think that's a good route to go. 10-frame langstroth. I use 2 deeps for my brood chambers and mediums for supers. That's my typical setup. I think that's also, I would say, typical, for most beekeepers. There are variations. Some people like to run all mediums. Some people like to run all deeps. The one thing I do want to clear up is I hear people call these deep supers. They're not supers. It's only a super when it's used for surplus honey. The way the hive looks when it's set up, and again, this is the typical setup. This is my typical setup and typical setup. Again, different variations. There you go. That's your finished product. Doesn't mean you're going to start beekeeping. That's what it's going to look like. You're going to start small and it's going to build. So you have a bottom board, you have a deep brood chamber, and a medium super. If you were running all mediums, all of this size box, and you had, say, 5 of them, and the bottom 3 had all brood, their resources for raising bees and pollen, those would be called brood chambers, even though they're medium boxes. When the bees start putting their surplus honey up top, that now becomes a honey super. Same thing if you use all deeps. You'd have your brood, and then your top box that they started putting all that surplus honey in is going to be your super. It would be a deep super at that point. So you either have medium brood chambers or deep brood chambers, medium supers, or deep supers. Whatever it's being used for is what it is. So there you go. That's your typical setup. We'll break down to individual components, and I'm going to go from the bottom up. I'll explain each piece. Some of them are really simple, and some of them need a little explanation, the covers in particular. So you're going to start with your bottom board. This is a 10-frame bottom board. You're going to paint all your equipment. Anything that touches the outside, you're going to paint. If you'll notice, I forgot to paint this part. It happens. I just put it outside anyway. If you don't paint your equipment, it's just going to shave some years off of the life of your equipment. So it's not a big deal that I forgot that. I typically do paint up to this. When you put your box on, you'll know that's the part that's exposed to the outside. So that's your bottom board. This is your deep brood chamber. And inside you have your frames. When you order your equipment, you're going to buy the frames under the 10-frame equipment if that's what you choose to use. If you choose 8-frame, it will be categorized under 8-frame equipment. So for the purpose of this demonstration, we're just going to talk specifically about deep frames and deep equipment all around. So you got your bottom board, deep super, filled with the deep frames. I choose plastic foundation. Some people use natural wax foundation. I used natural wax foundation for my first 2 years. I had a couple blowouts where the frames they kind of fell apart in the hive when it was really hot in August during heat waves. I don't know if I did something wrong, if that's typically happens or it doesn't happen that often. I kind of gave up on them and just went right to plastic and had really no problems ever since. They come pre-waxed from most of the manufacturers. So if you look at pre-waxed frames, some people, myself included, still like to put an additional coat of wax on before they go out into production. That's going to be a whole nother video coming up rather soon. So I'll get into that. But this is your frame, and this is how your hive goes together. 10 frames in the box. You're going to start beekeeping. You're going to get your nuke or your package, and you're going to start off with just your single box. And then you have your inner cover, notched inner cover. You see it has a notch right there? It serves a very important purpose, actually. Two purposes. So that goes on here, like that. I like mine at the rear of the hive. I'm going to spin it to the front just for demonstration purposes. But I believe some people do still run them in the front. I don't think it matters if it's in the front or the back. I do prefer them in the back. It's a rear entrance, I call it. It also acts as ventilation. Your hive is always going to breathe. Air is going to come in, air is going to go out. So it's kind of like a vent. Really, really important in the wintertime, especially. So you have your inner cover, and then you have your outer cover. And this is called the telescoping outer cover. And basically, it's a little bit bigger than the whole, the dimensions of the equipment, because it's meant to slide. And what that does is it pulls forward, and it leaves a good ½ inch or so, and it leaves that exposed to breathe. And the bees can also leave here and make this a top entrance for your hive. Summertime, you want your hives to breathe. You don't want them getting too hot. You want them to be ventilated, just like we want our living space ventilated. The bees need their space ventilated as well. In the wintertime, this becomes moisture control, and it is so important. You know, your bees are always generating heat, and that's outside air. These box walls are going to be as cold as it is outside, and the bees are warming their cluster up, generating heat, which is obviously going to generate moisture on these surfaces. You need that to vent out. Air comes in, it comes out the top here. I'm going to have a whole nother video on wintering bees by next winter. That shows how I winter bees in the Northeast here in New Jersey. So just put that in the back of your head, food for thought. That top entrance is very important in the wintertime, as it is in the summertime as well. As your bees grow and they start drawing out their frames, what I talk about drawing out is that's right out of the box. They have to build those cells out, that comb. If you see, there's like all the little hexagons in there, like a normal honeycomb, but all the wax is missing. They're going to put that wax in there. This one, they started doing. You can see how it's nice white? That's wax. They did that. They drew that out. This was towards the end of the season. They didn't finish, so I kind of took it out of production, and I put in a drawn frame to replace it to give them time to put stores in it and use it for what they needed it for. So they weren't wasting time drawing this out. And then a fully drawn out frame will look like that. That's a fully drawn frame. They pull that wax all out. They use it to store their resources, their brood. The queen lays her eggs in there. We'll talk about brood patterns and what goes where in the hive typically in another video. I'm trying to just keep this as equipment and what equipment to get. So those are your drawn out frames. Then when you get your package of bees or your nukes or whatever, and they start drawing out your frames, and like, let's say 80% of your frames look like that, like drawn out, as opposed to this. So out of 10 frames in the box, when you get like 8 of them that are drawn out like that and have drawn comb, not like that. So 8 of those get drawn out, it's time to add your second box. And then they'll build out that hive, or that hive body, I should say, or brood chamber. Once they build that all out, then it's time to add your supers. And you start supering your hives. Until by the middle of the season, hopefully, you have something that looks like this. Maybe not the top super. That, for a first-year beehive starting from a package, that might be a lofty goal to expect them to have a surplus of honey for you to take. I tell most new beekeepers, don't count on honey your first year that you start. Your goal is to get your bees through winter. Get familiar with your equipment, get familiar with the bees, learn the bees, and learn how to prepare them for winter and get them through the winter. If you manage to score some honey, hey, that's great. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I wouldn't make it one of your goals, because again, it's a lofty ask for the bees when you're just really trying to get them pushing to survive winter, and you're trying to get your feet wet and learn as you go too, because you are going to hit the ground running. You could read as many books as you want. Once you actually get in there on the practical side and start doing it, you're going to feel like you hit the ground running. My videos in the future hopefully will help you through that. This is my first video. It's just so raw and unpolished. I know, it probably really stinks. But that's why I want to saturate you with some good knowledge about the woodenware. Feel free to click subscribe. I am going to be putting more videos out. I don't know if I'm going to be doing, one a week. I can't commit to a time frame. Beekeeping's not my full-time gig, and YouTube videos certainly is not my full-time gig. I'm not even going to plan on becoming a YouTuber. I just want to put good information out there where people can go and learn about bees and anything beekeeping related. That's it. Thank you.